There is a quiet intelligence inside the human body that we often overlook, not because it is hidden, but because it is so familiar. Every step you take, every reach of your arm, every subtle twist of your spine carries within it a story of adaptation, survival, and remarkable design. Flexibility, in this sense, is not merely about stretching muscles or achieving dramatic poses. It is about preserving a dialogue between your brain, your muscles, and your connective tissues. A dialogue that keeps you fluid, responsive, and alive in a deeply functional way. If we observe the body through a scientific lens, flexibility is not a static trait. It is dynamic, constantly being negotiated by the nervous system. Muscles do not simply lengthen or shorten. They are guided by signals that assess safety, tension, and necessity. The body asks, in every moment, is it safe to move this far? Is it useful? And when movement becomes limited, it is often not because the structure has failed, but because the system has adapted to a lack of use. This is where everyday movements become profoundly important. Not the structured routines we often associate with exercise, but the small, repeated gestures that shape the architecture of our bodies over time. Consider, for a moment, the simple act of reaching overhead. It seems almost trivial, lifting your arm to grab something from a shelf. Yet within that motion, there is a coordinated symphony. The shoulder joint rotates, the scapula glides along the rib cage, the spine extends slightly, and even the rib cage expands to allow space. When performed regularly, this movement maintains the elasticity of the shoulder capsule, the mobility of the thoracic spine, and the responsiveness of the surrounding musculature. From a biological standpoint, what you are doing is reinforcing neural pathways. The brain is mapping this movement, keeping it accessible. When you stop reaching overhead, perhaps due to lifestyle constraints or prolonged sitting, the body begins to forget that range, not in a cognitive sense, but in a neuromuscular one. The tissues stiffen, not out of failure, but out of efficiency. The body conserves what it uses and sheds what it does not. Now imagine the opposite, making it a habit to reach upward several times a day. Not forcefully, not aggressively, but with awareness. Over time, the connective tissues, particularly fascia, begin to adapt. Fascia, often described as the body's internal web, responds to tension and movement. It becomes more hydrated, more pliable, and more capable of transmitting force efficiently. This is flexibility, not as a passive trait, but as an active, living process. Another movement that quietly shapes flexibility is the act of squatting. In many parts of the world, squatting is not exercise. It is rest. It is how people sit, wait, and even work. Biomechanically, a deep squat engages the ankles, knees, hips, and spine simultaneously. It maintains joint integrity across multiple planes of motion. What is fascinating is how the body interprets this position. When you regularly move into a squat, the nervous system becomes comfortable with deep joint angles. It reduces protective tension, allowing muscles to lengthen more freely. But when the squat disappears from daily life, those same joints begin to resist. The hips tighten, the ankles lose mobility, and the spine compensates. There is a subtle lesson here. The body does not resist movement out of stubbornness. It resists unfamiliarity. Flexibility, therefore, is as much about familiarity as it is about physical capacity. Then there is walking, perhaps the most underestimated movement of all. Walking is often framed as cardiovascular activity, but its role in maintaining flexibility is equally significant. Each step involves a gentle rotation of the pelvis, a counter-rotation of the shoulders, and a rhythmic extension and flexion of the hips. Scientifically, this rotational component is crucial. The human spine is designed not just for stability, but for controlled rotation. When you walk regularly, especially with a natural arm swing, you are preserving the rotational mobility of the thoracic spine. This, in turn, reduces strain on the lower back and maintains a balanced distribution of forces throughout the body. Moreover, walking stimulates synovial fluid production within the joints. This fluid There acts is also as a something lubricant, deeply reducing philosophical friction about walking and nourishing cartilage. It is a reminder Without that regular movement does not movement, need to be joints intense become to less be efficient. meaningful. not because they are damaged in many ways, because they are more powerful than intensity. Now, shift your attention to the act of twisting. Gentle, controlled rotation of the torso. This could be as simple as turning to look behind you or reaching across your body. Twisting movements are essential for spinal health, particularly in the thoracic region. From a structural perspective, the vertebrae in the thoracic spine are designed to allow rotation. Yet modern lifestyles often restrict this motion. We spend hours facing forward, towards screens, desks, and devices. Over time, the rotational capacity diminishes, and the body compensates by overusing other areas, such as the lower back. When you reintroduce twisting into your daily routine, you are not just stretching muscles. You are reawakening a pattern. The intervertebral discs receive nourishment through movement, as they rely on a process called imbibition, the absorption of fluids facilitated by pressure changes. Twisting gently compresses and decompresses these discs, promoting their health. But perhaps more importantly, twisting reintroduces variability. The body thrives on variability. It is not designed for repetition in a single plane, but for exploration across multiple dimensions. And then there is bending, forward, backward, and sideways. These movements, often performed unconsciously, play a critical role in maintaining the elasticity of the posterior and lateral chains of the body. When you bend forward to pick something up, the hamstrings lengthen, the spine flexes, and the nervous system assesses the safety of that motion. If performed regularly and without strain, this movement maintains the extensibility of the entire posterior chain. Side bending, on the other hand, stretches the often neglected lateral structures, the obliques, the intercostal muscles, and the fascia along the sides of the body. These areas are crucial for balance and coordination, yet they are rarely targeted in conventional exercise routines. Backward bending, even in small degrees, counteracts the forward dominant posture that many people adopt. It opens the chest, engages the posterior spinal muscles, and restores a sense of alignment. What is remarkable is that none of these movements require special equipment, designated time slots, or structured programs. They are already part of your life. The difference lies in awareness and intention. From a scientific perspective, the principle underlying all of this is adaptation. The body adapts to the stresses placed upon it, a concept known as mechanotransduction. Cells respond to mechanical stimuli by altering their behavior, producing proteins, reorganizing structures, and changing their function. When you move regularly and in varied ways, you are providing the stimuli necessary for these adaptations. You are signaling to your body that flexibility is valuable, that range of motion is needed, and that movement should remain accessible. There is also a neurological dimension that cannot be ignored. Flexibility is not solely determined by the length of muscles, but by the tolerance of the nervous system. When you approach movement with tension or fear, the body responds by tightening. When you move with curiosity and control, it responds by allowing. This is why gentle, consistent movements often yield better results than aggressive stretching. The nervous system learns that the movement is safe, and over time, it permits greater range. In a broader sense, these everyday movements reflect a deeper truth about health. It is not built in isolated moments of effort, but in the accumulation of small, repeated actions. The body does not distinguish between exercise and life. It responds to what you do most often. If your daily life includes reaching, squatting, walking, twisting, and bending, then flexibility becomes a natural byproduct. It is not something you chase, it is something you maintain. And perhaps there is something quietly profound in that realization. That the path to maintaining a flexible, resilient body is not hidden in complexity, but embedded in simplicity. That the movements you already perform, when done with awareness, can preserve the integrity of your body over time. In the end, flexibility is not about how far you can stretch, but about how freely you can move through your world. It is about preserving options, keeping doors open within your own body. And every time you reach, squat, walk, twist, or bend, you are, in a very real sense, choosing to keep those doors open.